There was a pot on every hob in post-war Britain, not a gleaming saucepan from a department store catalogue, a blackened, heavy thing, dented at the rim, sitting low over a gas flame or pressed against the hot plate of an aga. That pot was the difference between a family fed and a family hungry. Your Nan knew how to fill it with almost nothing. A marrow bone, a handful of barley, whatever the greengrocer had left over at 5 o'clock. And somehow every single time, something extraordinary came out of it. These 30 dishes were not recipes she followed. They were instincts she inherited, refined through rationing, through cold kitchens, through the arithmetic of stretching a shilling into 6 portions. Every one of them cost pennies. Every one of them fed a family, and most of them have all but vanished from British tables. This is their story. Number 30. Vegetable broth with pearl barley. The pot that started on Monday and finished on Friday, never the same twice and never quite empty. Whatever was in the vegetable rack went in. Carrot stumps, a yellowing parsnip, half an onion going soft. Pearl barley, at 4p a pound, swelled as it cooked, thickening the broth into something that clung to the spoon. Children carried it in flasks to school in winter. The barley absorbed everything, acting as both thickener and sustenance. Nothing glamorous, completely dependable. Number 29. Cock-a-leekie. An old boiling fowl, too tough for roasting, dropped whole into cold water with a bundle of leeks and a handful of prunes. 2 hours of simmering filled the house with something so deeply savory, it drew people from 3 rooms away. The prunes gave a low, sweet undercurrent that cut through the fat. The hock cost 1 shilling and 6p. It gave twice as much back as a roasting bird ever could. Number 28. Lentil and bacon. Soup. Red lentils dissolved into the cooking liquor without encouragement, thickening the pot naturally. Your Nan started with 2 rashers of streaky bacon, frying them in the dry pot to release fat, then building on top of that. Onion, carrot, lentils, water, and half an OXO cube if the purse allowed. So filling, it served as the main meal. In 1956, dried lentils appeared in over half of all British households each week. Number 27. Scouse. Liverpool claimed this dish and named the people after it. Neck or shin of beef, cut small, was dropped into a pot with onions, potatoes, and carrots. No stock, no wine, no herbs worth mentioning. Patience. Blind scouse was the version without meat, eaten during the leanest weeks. Neck of lamb cost under 2 shillings a pound in Liverpool markets. A pot of scouse fed 6 people, and it improved overnight. Mutton, dried split peas, pearl barley, bundles, turnip, carrot, leek and onion. Simmered 3 hours until it became almost too thick to pour. A bag of mixed broth vegetables cost 4p. The mutton was 1 shilling and 2p a pound. Diaries from Dundee tenements recall this pot every Tuesday without variation. Not because the family lacked imagination, but because nothing else gave so much back. Number 25. Oxtail stew. The oxtail cost almost nothing, because nobody with money wanted it. Browned in its own fat, they'd simmered for 3 hours, the tough connective tissue dissolved, and the cooking liquor turned thick and glossy with natural gelatin. The flavor was deeper and richer than any expensive cut could manage. It sold for under 1 shilling a pound in 1952. Children fished the meatiest segments from the pot. The pot went back on the stove the next evening, and it was better for it. First pattern break. Here is what your Nan understood that we have forgotten. Cheap cuts are not inferior cuts. They are cuts that require time instead of money. The collagen in tough cuts dissolves during long, slow cooking and turns into gelatin. Gelatin is what gives proper gravy its body, its shine, and that coating sensation on the lips that makes food taste finished. You cannot buy that in a bottle. You can only cook it out of the cheapest meat in the shop, exactly as she did. Number 24. PEA and ham soup. The ham bone was never thrown away. When the joint was stripped clean, the bone went straight into the pot with dried split peas, a halved onion, and cold water. It simmered for 2 hours. The peas dissolved, and the bone gave up its smoky, salted flavor into the broth. So thick a spoon stood upright, so green it almost glowed. The split peas were 4p a pound. The whole pot fed 6 for about 6p. Number 23rd, Minestrone. Every leftover vegetable in the rack, wilted cabbage, old carrots, a tin of haricot beans, broken pasta from the bottom of the packet. A knob of dripping for richness. There was no single correct version. It changed each week depending on what needed using up, which was exactly the point. A tin of haricot beans cost about 4p. The rest of the ingredients cost nothing because they were already in the kitchen. Ox kidney, sliced small. Soaked briefly in cold salted water, fried in dripping with onion, then covered and simmered for an hour. Dark, intensely savory, with a depth that stock cubes cannot replicate. About 8p a pound in 1954. Thickened with a spoonful of flour stirred into cold water. Diaries from Birmingham. Back-to-backs recall it every Thursday, the smell drifting into the street. Number 21. Chicken and vegetable hot pot. When the Sunday roast was stripped to the bone, the carcass went into the pot the same evening. It was simmered overnight on the lowest flame. By morning there was proper golden stock, set firm when cold. Monday's dinner was built from that stock with leftover vegetables, a handful of barley, and the last scraps of meat picked from the carcass. The second meal cost nothing beyond the vegetables. In many households it tasted better than the Sunday roast itself. Number 20. Brown Windsor soup. Beef shin, browned with onions and root vegetables, covered with water and a splash of Worcestershire sauce, simmered until the broth turned the color of mahogany. Thickened with flour and strained, not fashionable, not elegant, hot, filling, made entirely from the cheapest ingredients in the shop, under 1 shilling for the lot. On a cold November evening, that was exactly what was required. Notice that every single pot on this list begins the same way. Fat in the bottom. Onion going in first. The smell of onion in hot fat is the foundational smell of British cooking, the signal to everyone in the house that something is coming. Your Nan did not do this by accident. She understood that caramelized onion created a base flavor that carried the entire dish. Every food scientist who studied the Maillard reaction in a laboratory was decades behind the woman at the stove in 1953, who knew by instinct what browning the onions first actually did. Number 19. Rabbit stew. Market stalls sold rabbits for under a shilling each in the early 1950s. They were jointed, browned in dripping, then simmered with onion, carrot, and turnip for 2 hours. Some women added prunes for sweetness. Others finished the pot with a splash of milk, which softened the flavor enough that a reluctant child might eat without protest. A single rabbit fed 6 people. As chicken prices fell in the 1960s, rabbits disappeared from market stalls, and this stew went with them. Number 18. Pork and vegetable broth. A pork hock cost about 6p each. It was covered in cold water with split peas, barley, leek, carrot, and onion. It simmered for 2 hours. The hock gave up both its meat and its gelatin into the liquor. The peas dissolved around it, and the broth turned thick and sustaining. The meat fell in thick shreds and went back into the pot. Oral histories from the Welsh valleys recall this every Wednesday. The hock was bought on Tuesday before it sold out. Number 17. Boiled beef and carrots. Silverside cost about 2 shillings a pound in 1955. It was placed into cold water with whole carrots, onions, and a bay leaf, and simmered very gently for 3 hours. The carrots turned intensely sweet in the salty broth. The cooking liquid became a strong, clear soup, served separately or saved for the following day. Cold slices appeared in sandwiches all week. Nothing wasted, nothing could be. Number 16. Leek and potato soup. Leeks from the allotment, old potatoes going soft. An onion, cold water, and a knob of butter added at the end. Cook for 30 minutes. Roughly mash in the pot rather than blend, thickened by the potato's own starch. Families with a garden plot could make this for 8 weeks on what they grew themselves. It appeared in Women's Institute cookbooks as economy cooking, which meant it was already so common it barely needed instruction. Stale bread was never thrown away. When it went too hard to eat, it went into the soup pot. Tinned tomatoes, an onion fried in dripping, a cup of water, and the bread torn in and stirred until it thickened everything into something between a soup and a stew. A tin of tomatoes cost 6pence in 1957. The bread cost nothing because it was already there. Bread starch gave the soup a body that no thickener could replicate, made in under 20 minutes. There is a pattern here that food companies spent a great deal of money making us forget in the 1960s. Every dish on this list is made from 3 or 4 cheap ingredients, cooked slowly in water with fat and onion. That is not a limitation. That is a technique. The slow transfer of flavor from meat and vegetables into cooking liquor, which then becomes the sauce and the soup and the gravy all at once, is the fundamental principle of every great cuisine on earth. The French call it fond. Your Nan called it getting on with it. The convenience food industry called it old-fashioned. They needed you to believe that, because if you kept making this, you would never need them. Number 14. Tripe and onions. Pale slabs of honeycomb stomach covered in milk with sliced onions, simmered gently for an hour until the tripe turned tender and the milk thickened into a pale sauce. In 1952, tripe was 15% of all meat eaten in Lancashire mill towns. Over 300 tripe shops operated in Greater Manchester alone. Children either loved it or fled the kitchen. As supermarkets rose and butchers closed, it vanished. The version in plastic trays on refrigerated shelves was nothing like the real thing. Number 13. Lentil dahl with stale bread. Red lentils cooked down with onion, a knob of butter stirred in at the end, eaten with yesterday's bread softened in the hot pot. The lentils provided protein, the bread provided starch, and the combination provided everything a working body needed. Dried red lentils were available at 4pence a pound by the early 1960s. A pound fed 4 people. Many grew up eating this and found themselves missing it after they left home. Pig's liver, heart, and belly were mixed with onion and sage, shaped into portions, wrapped in caul fat, then packed into a roasting dish with onion gravy and baked low and slow until the caul fat rendered and the gravy reduced and concentrated. The smell of sage and pork liver baking in onion gravy was one of the definitive smells of the black country kitchen. A portion from the faggot shop cost about 4pence. Supermarkets later produced a shrink-wrapped version, so unlike the original that it served mainly as a reminder of what had been lost. Number 11. Cock broth. When a laying hen had stopped being useful, It was not wasted. Dropped into cold water with root vegetables and simmered for 3 hours, it produced the richest broth imaginable. The old bird had spent years building flavor in its muscles, and all of that transferred directly into the cooking liquid. Barley thickened it. Leeks sweetened it. The meat was stripped from the bone and returned in shreds. A spent laying hen sometimes cost nothing at all. The broth it produced was something you could not buy. Number 10. Corned beef hash. Tins of Argentine corned beef arrived at British docks by the hundreds of thousands. Your nan diced the meat with potatoes and onion and fried the lot until the bottom crisped. 1 tin, 1 pot. 15 minutes. A tin cost about 1 shilling. The result fed 4 people and left nothing to wash up except the pan. When fresh meat became affordable and freezers arrived, corned beef hash vanished almost overnight. Plenty of people found themselves making it decades later and being surprised by how good it tasted. 4th pattern break. The dishes lower in this list required the least skill. As we move toward the top, they require more patience and more knowledge. That is the hidden truth about cheap cooking. It is not simple. It asks for understanding. Understanding that tough meat needs time, that flavor builds in layers, that yesterday's bread is an ingredient. The women who ran these kitchens on almost nothing were applying expertise that took decades to acquire, and they did it every day without being told it was impressive. Number 9. Mutton broth. Mutton neck, at 1 shilling and 6pence a pound, browned in the pot covered with water, then simmered for 2.5 hours with turnip, carrot, onion, and barley. The fat was skimmed and saved for frying. The meat was served in the broth. Nothing separated, nothing plated differently. The broth absorbed everything those bones could give and gave it all back in one bowl. Honest food from an honest pot. Number 8. Pottage. The oldest dish on this list and the most forgotten. Oats or barley cooked in stock with onion, root vegetables, and leftover meat scraps. Thick, filling, cheap beyond imagination. By the 1950s, it had no name. It was simply what you made when there was almost nothing left and you still needed to feed the family. Your nan would not have called it anything. She would have called it, "What's for tea?" Neck of lamb, the cheapest cut of the animal, went into the pot with pearl, barley, onion, carrot, and cold water. The barley swelled as it cooked, absorbing the fat from the lamb and thickening the broth until it set firm when cold. It was left on the range while your nan went to work. The lamb neck cost 1 shilling and 4pence in 1955. The barley was 4pence a pound. The whole pot fed 6 for under 2 shillings. The barley made the potato unnecessary. Number 6. Potato and onion soup with dripping. This was the soup your nan made when there was almost nothing left. Potatoes, onion, water, and beef dripping. The onion was fried in the dripping until soft. Potatoes went in, cut small, and water added to cover. After 20 minutes, they were mashed roughly in the pot, thickened by their own starch. A spoonful of dripping stirred in at the end gave the soup a meatiness that cost nothing. Because the dripping jar was already on the range, children ate this on winter evenings and thought they were eating soup, which is exactly what they were. Number 5. Pea soup with bacon bits. Split peas were put into water with an onion and whatever pork scraps were available, such as bacon rind, a ham bone, or the ends of a few rashers. It simmered for 90 minutes and was stirred regularly to stop it catching. It turned intensely green and was deeply savory from the pork. It was served with bread for mopping. A pound of split peas at 4 pence made enough soup to feed a family 4 times over. In the northeast, this was eaten 6 months of the year without variation, and nobody complained. Suet pastry lined the pudding basin. Inside, beef skirt and ox kidney sat with onion and a thick gravy. Sealed, covered, and steamed above simmering water for 3 hours. The steam cooked the pastry into something glossy and firm, while the filling became impossibly tender, the kidney dissolving into the gravy and the beef falling apart. Beef skirt cost 1 shilling and 6pence a pound. The kidney was even cheaper, sometimes given away. The finished pudding, turned out onto a plate and cut open to release a rush of dark, fragrant steam, was one of the great glories of British cooking. Number 3. Scrag end of lamb with winter vegetables. The scrag end is the neck of the lamb, bony and cheap, under 1 shilling per pound. Browned in the pot, covered with water, and cooked for 2.5 hours with turnip, carrot, onion, and parsley. Those bones were not an inconvenience. They were a flavor delivery system. The broth that resulted looked as though it had been enriched with cream. The meat fell from the bones in thick shreds, made by women who understood exactly what they were doing and who never once received credit for it. Number 2. Irish stew. Mutton neck chops, onion, and potato. Nothing more. The potatoes at the bottom of the pot dissolved into the cooking liquor over 2 hours, thickening the broth naturally until it became a gravy that coated everything. Mutton neck at 1 shilling a pound. Potatoes were even cheaper. It fed 6 for under 1 shilling and 6pence. Oral histories from Irish families in Manchester, Liverpool, and Birmingham recall this pot simmering every Monday of their childhood. It needed no adaptation. It needed no improvement. It was already perfect. Number 1. Beef shin stew. At the top of this list is the dish that best represents everything your Nan understood about feeding a family on almost nothing. Beef shin at 1 shilling a pound, with the marrow bone still in. It was browned in dripping, built up with onion, carrot, and flour, then covered with cold water and left on the lowest heat for 3 hours. Plain water turned into something almost brown with flavor. Potatoes went in for the final 45 minutes. When it came to the table, the meat fell apart at the touch. Fathers ate in silence, which meant it was good. The pot went back on the stove the next evening and tasted better than the night before. This was not cheap food pretending to be something better. It was cheap food that was better than most things money could buy. Your Nan knew that every time she set that pot on the hob. 30 dishes, 1 pot, almost no money, and never once an empty seat at the table. These were not recipes from a book. They were knowledge passed between women in kitchens where the budget was fixed and the family was not. We replaced it all with convenience food that cost 4 times as much, and that gave back only a fraction of the satisfaction. Your Nan would have a word or two to say about that.